Rabbi. Good to see you again.
Always good to see me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I wanted to touch base with you is that we've recently had the Passover. Uh, and one of the things that many people were wondering was that, there is this preparation of cleaning the leaven. How long really does it take, and what exactly do you do, and when do you do it with regards to the 14th of Nisan?
There are families with large homes and 10 children that can spend weeks cleaning for Passover. It's a major thing. Generally, people start from when after Purim is done, so people could take a long time. It's just in a place where chametz, where leaven has never entered, there's no need to clean. But there is a bedikat chametz, which means there is a searching for the leaven, any remnant of leavened bread. This is a very careful process that is done the night before the Passover Seder. So it would be the night of the 14th, which means imagine today is during the day of the 13th of the first month, right? So the next day begins at nightfall. So that night, which is a day before you eat the Passover Seder, there's a special search for the chametz where every square millimeter of the home is carefully searched, and then any leaven that's discovered is burnt early in the morning. And so it's quite a process.
Now, in the four Gospels, there is the narrative of the Last Supper in all the four Gospels, and each of the Gospels tend to talk about the first day of unleavened bread, and then interspersed with the Passover. And many Christian scholars tend to feel that in the Second Temple period, that the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were merged together into an 8 day celebration called the Feast of Unleavened Bread to provide a way to harmonize the accounts in the four Gospels. Um, you have studied this before. What is your comment and whether this is a valid point they're making?
Yeah. So Christians are in an how do I say this, in an unenviable situation, because the Christian Bible does not agree with itself, let alone the Jewish scriptures. The writers of the Christian Bible, either like the author of John, didn't know about the book of Mark. 90% of what's in the book of John appears nowhere in the book of Mark. But they didn't care. They were very interested in presenting their theology and adjusting manufacturing datum according to their theology and according to their view. There was no 8 day Passover in the land of Israel during the Second Temple period. There never was, never will be. Open up Leviticus chapter 23 for yourself. Moreover, it's very clear in the Gospels that John is having Jesus crucified a day earlier than the Synoptic Gospels. The term synoptic, well, literally two Greek words, synoptic with one view. It refers to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So whereas Matthew, Mark, and Luke have the Last Supper a Passover Seder, And therefore Jesus is crucified on the first day of Passover, okay, which is the 15th day of Nisan. John has Jesus crucified, as it says explicitly in John 19, verse 14. Just read it for yourself. It was the preparation day for the Passover, about the 6th hour, and he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." It was the preparation day, which means it was the day of the 14th day of Nisan, not the 15th day of Nisan. These cannot be harmonized. It's impossible. Because John was very, very specific. He did not want Jesus crucified on the first day of Passover, as Matthew, Mark, and Luke, because he wanted Jesus to be crucified on the day that the Passover lamb was sacrificed. See John chapter 1, verse 29. See John chapter 1, verse 36. Behold the Lamb of God. You won't find that phrase anywhere in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. There's a reason for it. You won't find that theology that Jesus is equated with the Lamb of God in the Synoptic Gospels. It doesn't exist. So, therefore, when you find the Last Supper in the book of John, in chapter 13, there's no bread and wine. The Eucharist is not found in John 13. If you want to find the Eucharist, go to John chapter 6, but it's not happening at the dinner of John chapter 13. What happens instead in John chapter 13 is something that you will not find in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and that is Jesus is washing the feet of the disciples. That's where that comes from. And there's a very good reason for it, because there wouldn't be any matzah and there would not be any wine. So I want to just again make this very clear for the viewer. In the secular world, the date changes at midnight. At 12 a.m., so right after that, it becomes the next day. The calendar changes. Okay, that happens to be arbitrary, because when 12 a.m., when midnight occurs, depending on the time of the year, it can happen but that's the way the secular world works. Okay, it runs according to midnight, a system that goes back. I'm not getting into it now, but goes back to the Babylonian Empire. The Jews don't operate that way because the Bible doesn't operate that way. It is nightfall that determines the next day. So therefore, Passover begins on the 15th day of the first month, which we call Nisan. The 15th begins when? The night of the 14th. So if today it's daylight and it's the preparation day of Passover, and today's the 14th, as soon as it's nightfall and you could see the stars, so then it becomes the 15th day at that moment, because the Torah says it was evening, it was morning one day, and then you've gone to the next day. It's really very simple, and it's that night, the night after so let's say during the day of the 14th, the lambs are being slaughtered. They are then eaten that night. Families would gather together because you had to eat an entire lamb. A lamb is a large animal. It's not the biggest animal in the world. It's not a cow, but it's very unlikely that one family could eat an entire lamb, because none of it could be left over until the morning. So families would come together, would gather together, and they had to eat the Passover lamb full. I'm not getting into why, but they had to eat it a la soiva, completely full. So you could have had 50, 100 people sitting around, all finishing off the lamb by the morning. It had to be done. Now, in order to eat from that Passover lamb, you had to be in a state of purity. The Torah provides a a mechanism. What happens if you're not in a state of purity? You had to bury a dead person the day before. So there's a month later you can have the Passover lamb. That's a special method in the Torah. No 8th day. That's all nonsense. It's all fake. Let's talk reality. So remember again, to eat the Passover lamb, you had to be a Jew, and you had to be in a state of purity. You were very, very careful not to allow yourself to go into any place that was suspect of being impure. It is for that reason that on the day of the crucifixion, the Jews would not enter the praetorium of Pontius Pilate, means his palace, because they did not want to become defiled. Why not? They didn't want to become defiled because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover lamb that night. What are you talking about? You already would have eaten it according to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. This is all very, very simple. The praetorium was a place of kings, but they buried ancestors there. They had all kinds of things that would defile you in a home of a pagan. So if you wanted to remain in a state of purity, you did not go into Pontius Pilate's praetorium. The praetorium appears prominently in the Gospels, but only in John did the Jews refuse to go in because they did not want to become defiled. That can't exist in Matthew. That can't exist in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Why? Because in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, by the time you're at the day of the 15th of Passover, the day of the first day of Passover, you have already eaten the Passover lamb the night before. So therefore there is no concern about becoming defiled, becoming impure, so that you can eat from the Passover. Why is there no problem? It's very simple. Because you already ate it already. You see, this is all nonsense. I mean, you could go at this in any way you want. And this is in John chapter 18, verse 28. The Jews would not go into the praetorium because they didn't want to become defiled. And it says it explicitly. Nothing I am saying here is like me reading into the text. There's nothing I'm sharing with you that is sort of some conspiracy theory that I'm just inferring from a passage. Read John 18:28 for yourself. As you would expect, you will find nothing like that in the Synoptic Gospels. The mountain it's not that there's evidence. This is completely clear. And Christians know there's a problem, and that's why they fought over when should they celebrate Easter. The church knew this was a problem. This is not the expressions of an anti-Christian rabbi in Jerusalem. Everybody knows this, except for parishioners. They have no clue, because pastors refuse to teach them this. This is for this reason only in the book of John. So John's Last Supper, it's not the Last Supper, but John's dinner, we'll call it the Last Supper, where the feet of the disciples are being washed, right? So only there do you have the disciples seeing Judas Iscariot, the one who betrays Jesus, taking the money that had been collected, and they assume, why is this guy leaving with the money? And they assume that he's leaving. This is during what should be the Last Supper. This is the night before the crucifixion, that he is going to purchase food for the festival. Just read it for yourself. Now, why would you find that in Matthew, Mark, and Luke? Because it would be ridiculous in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Because in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the Passover Seder is in your stomach. You ate it already. There's no need to buy the needs for the festival feast. You follow? So what John has done here, he has changed the date. Why? Because he subscribes to a theology that Jesus is the Lamb of God. The Synoptic Gospels did not. Matthew and Luke, copying Mark, did not. Now, this Joannian theology was not invented by the writer of John. It was out there. We know that because we find Jesus equated with the Passover already in 1 Corinthians 5:7. So we know that idea was out there. We know that Jesus equated with the Passover was out there in 1 Corinthians 10. We know that. Equated with the Exodus and so on. So we know that. It's just each of these writers are coming at this from a different Christology, and here's what's germane. They were perfectly willing and able to change their own book according to their theological outlook. Now, what is strange is that Christians genuinely believe that the Passover lamb was there to atone for sin, and Jesus is that Passover lamb that atones for your sin. But as it turns out, the Passover lamb never atoned for sin. You won't find that in the Jewish Bible anywhere. The Passover lamb is what the Jewish people were instructed to slaughter and to eat before the Exodus in order to demonstrate their fear of God exceeded their fear of the Egyptian soldiers. A lamb was worshipped in Egypt, as were many other creatures. It was a crime to kill a lamb. That's what you find in Exodus 8. Moses responding to Pharaoh, why don't you bring the offering here? Moses says, you'll kill us. So the Jews who were loyal to God demonstrated that loyalty by sacrificing the Passover lamb and eating it that night and preparing to leave like a birth canal through a bloody doorway, shot out like a cannon in the blink of an eye. Dough didn't even have enough time to rise. So what I want to do is like sort of summarize this one point. People get all hooked up. They get all excited. They get all amped up that there's a contradiction. And the contradiction, this contradiction in particular, there's no answer to. I mean, everybody has some sort of answer, but the answers that you'll encounter are so torturous or so ridiculous. It's like the answers you'll find that of flat earth people that say that there was no moon landing in the 1960s and that was all staged. So they've got books to prove that the earth is flat and Australia doesn't exist. But the evidence is so overwhelming. The claim is so fantastic. Fantastic claims require fantastic evidence. There is no the arguments they give are torturous, and Christians are trying to save themselves from drowning. Because if John lied, if John changed datum, then the credibility of the book of John, with the credibility of the Gospels, collapses completely, and then Christianity has to be a false religion. So this is very, very critical to the church. As it will turn out, John becomes the kind of favorite gospel of the church. Many Christians consider it their favorite. It becomes the most spiritual gospel of the church. It contains the highest Christology of the church. It contains the largest dialogues in all the Gospels by far. I mean, John is noted for these massive discourses that don't exist anywhere in the Synoptic Gospels. So in a way, John kind of wins out. And you can see that just even going to the Diatessaron, a second century work, which seeks to sort of create one harmony where the emphasis is on John. So none of these answers work. The Christian Bible contains fallacies, not mistakes. These aren't errors. I mean, it's very possible that I could actually assure you that many of the contradictions in the New Testament are just simple, silly mistakes that Matthew made, when reading Zechariah. He just misread the text and he rewrote it. That's not interesting. It's not interesting if a scribe made a mistake. There are tons of scribal errors that really change things. Mark 1:41, But that's whatever. It's a mistake. Okay? These are not mistakes, my friends. These are alterations that the church was willing to do in order to create a story that fit their Christology, in the case of John, their very high Christology. And that's why I urge you, you're a Christian, think about this, look into this very carefully. It's time to turn back. It's time to return to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Seek this out, and then come home. It's time to come home. Thank you.